In this section, we'll take a look at how to trigger the cutscenes, starting with our sleeping guard interaction. When Darren gets close enough to the security desk, we'll trigger our cutscene to take over, and let the player watch Darren steal the keycard. We'll be creating a simple inventory system to determine if Darren has the keycard or not. This will be important later when we check the win conditions. In this video, we are going to start working on the sleeping guard cutscene. We created the cutscene, and what we need to do now is actually activate it.
If you toss a coin in another location using the right mouse button, then the guards will be distracted.
So I'm going to make my way over to Darren without getting caught, and I highly recommend you do the same. Pause the video and get Darren to the security guard desk. Or better yet, let's just go ahead and look at it in the scene view before we actually focus on moving Darren. The goal here is what we need to do is if we look at the security desk, and if we look at our level colliders, there's a collider around the security desk. And this specifically is a grab cutscene zone. The idea here is Darren is going to trigger this automatically. There's nothing, he doesn't have to press a key. He's going to walk into this desk, and we're going to trigger and activate the cutscene where Darren grabs the key. So what I want you guys to do in this challenge is create the C# script to attach to this and make it so that when Darren collides with this table, it's going to automatically enable the sleeping guard cutscene. So to get started, make sure everyone has the same script. We're going to create a new C# script, and we're going to call this, let's call this grab keycard activation. So grab keycard activation. And this script is going to be responsible for turning on the sleeping guard cutscene. Okay, so what you want to do is select that collider, the grab cutscene zone, and drag that script onto it into the inspector. So grab keycard activation and drag it over. I'll see you guys in the challenge review. In this challenge review, we're going to create the ability to activate the sleeping guard cutscene when we trigger this. So let's open up our script, grab keycard activation. We're going to go in here. We don't need any void start and void update, because anytime we're working with trigger activations, we're going to be using on trigger enter. So void on trigger enter. We're going to have collider other. And it looks like my Visual Studio here has decided to stop syncing, so I'm going to save my script. I'm going to close Visual Studios and reopen it. Okay, so we're going to create void on trigger enter. And we're going to use collider other. All right, so what we want to do first is we're just going to check for Darren, which is other.tag equals player. All right, so Darren has a tag of player. The next thing that we want to do here is we just need to activate that object. So here we're going to say public game object activate, or public game object, we'll say sleeping guard cutscene. From here, we want to hop into our if statement, and we're going to say sleeping guard cutscene set active is going to be true. That will enable the cutscene when Darren collides with that booth. So if we minimize this, head back into Unity, let Unity recompile, and what we're going to want to do here is select our grab cutscene zone, make sure our script is attached, grab keycard activation, and let's drag the game object that has our sleeping guard cutscene. That's going to be sleeping guard cutscene. Let's save our scene, run our game, and let's get Darren over to this point. Pause the game and go ahead and pause the video and get Darren to this area, and I'll see you when you have that. Okay, so here I am. I'm about to walk up to this guard's desk. I'm gonna go behind this pillar here.
I knew it! I know a sleeping guard when I see one. Quick, grab his card.
Okay, so The audio trigger already occurred, and the reason why we didn't have to set that up is, if you remember, we added all 3 of those voiceover triggers at the same time, and all we had to do is just modify which clip to play. And later in the video, we are going to actually work on an audio solution so that everything isn't so loud and audio is consistent. All right, and we'll get to that later in the course. So let's look at our trigger here. We're going to activate the sleeping guard by just walking into this trigger zone. So we're going to go in here. Let's walk into the trigger. And the trigger isn't working because I accidentally forgot the most important aspect. If you select the grab cutscene zone, we need to add a rigid body. Make sure that Unity is stopped playing. Click on your level colliders, the grab cutscene zone, and let's add a rigid body component. Make sure use gravity is turned off. From here, we also want to make sure that our grab cutscene zone trigger is set to true. Run the game, get back to this point, and I'll see you then. Okay, so here we are. I'm going to step into this collider zone, and there we go. So we have our interaction happening, but what's the problem? We see the game asset guard there as well. So in the next video, we're going to look at how to fix this. Also, what happens once the event happened? Our cutscene is over, but our actor is still there. So we also need to hide the actors and bring us back to the game state. So we got a few things we got to fix. So I'll see you guys in the next video. So in this video, we're going to fix a few things with our sleeping guard cutscene. The first thing we want to do is select your sleeping guard cutscene, enable the game object, and double click the playable director in the inspector to bring up the timeline editor. From here, let's stack the timeline editor down here so we can see our game view. If we preview this, you can see here that one of the main issues here is that our sleeping guard asset, our game asset, is there. So what we want to do is we want to hide the game asset and basically have it come back at the end. And another thing I noticed is that we never created a fade to black for this cutscene. So while we're fading to black, that's when we want to bring back the game assets and hide the actors. So to create something like this, it's pretty easy to do. Similar to how we grabbed the guard's keycard, what we want to do is basically use an activation track and have the guard game asset disappear for the entire track but come back at the end. So to do that, we're going to create an activation track, and we're going to send the sleeping guard game asset to that slot. From there, if we look at this currently, right now its activation track is the length of the clip. That means that it's going to stay active the entire time. But if I remove this and I make it so that it's only active, say on the last frame, then it's going to be hidden until the last frame. If you select the activation track, in the inspector, we can have a start and end frame. So this frame for the animation, the whole animation is 360 frames. So I'm going to say my start frame is 359, and my end frame is going to be 360. So for one frame, that's when we're going to bring them back, and that's at that point we'll be at a full fade to black, and we won't even notice that he came back. And as you can see here, as we play, there's no game asset, but as soon as I go to that last frame, he pops in there for a split second. All right, so that solves the game asset issue. Now, what about after, when we finish the cutscene and we're back here, we see our actors? Well, we're going to do the same approach here. So we're going to create an activation track. We're going to add our actors to the game object, which if you go into your sleeping guard cutscene, we have actors. Drag them in. And when should the actors be activated? They should be activated the entire track except for the very end. So maybe let's set them to about 359. So here's the actors. And if you select the activation track, we want them to hide when we bring back the guard. So select it, and we're going to say the end frame is going to be 359. So at this point, here we go. We can play this. We're going to grab the key card. The actors are in play. The actors disappear, and it's just the guard. As simple as that. Last thing we need to do now is just create a fade to black. So go ahead and create the fade to black, and I'll see you in the challenge review. In this video, we're going to create that camera fade black to alpha or alpha to black for the end here. So looking at our timeline, and if you don't have it open, select the sleeping guard cutscene, double click the playable director, and they'll bring up the timeline editor. If we play this, we have a black fade. So we have black to alpha. And what we'd like to do is in the same cut here, at the very end, we're going to go ahead and create a alpha to black. So let's just select this record button here. So we are now recording our alpha image and go to about, I guess, the 345th frame, maybe the 336th frame. And we can go ahead, and actually let's preview this. We can go ahead at right here, start fading to black. So create your first frame by selecting our canvas, going into the camera fade, and adjusting the alpha. That will create the first frame, keep it at 0. Then go ahead and move over to the very end, and we want it to be fully black before we actually bring our actor back, or our game asset back. So at about 356, we should be full black. Bring your alpha all the way up, close that, stop recording, and let's preview the timeline. Here we go. We're going to steal the card. Perfect. All right, so now we have another issue where we want to make sure that we turn this object off. Okay, so right now you can see here in our canvas that we are at a full alpha, like we're at a full opaque right now for the alpha layer. So we want to actually set that back to 0 or disable this game object at the end. So the easier solution here is to actually create an animation track or an activation track for this object and just turn it off at the end. So to do that, we're going to create a cutscene, or we're going to click on our sleeping guard cutscene, go to Add, Activation Track, and at the bottom, drag your camera fade alpha. And we want it to be active until the very last frame, and I believe 356 is when it's full black. So at 357, we can shut it off. So start is going to be 0 and end is going to be 357. And if we test this out, you'll see here it's black, and then it's good to go. And actually, because our actors and everything doesn't appear until 359, we should probably do the same. So select the activation track for the camera fade and set the end to be 359 or even 360 is probably okay. Let's save this and let's preview it. We'll take the card. Good. All right. I will see you guys in the next video. In this video, I want to go ahead and test out the current behavior that we have, because I want to make sure that our cutscene is going to work as expected. And then also, I want to make sure that our camera system returns to normal afterwards. So I'm going to play the game and get back to the security desk. I'll see you when I do that. All right, so here we are. I'm going to, one of the things I noticed right off the bat is that my security guard is not here. So I'm going to actually restart the game. I want to make sure that he is indeed in the game, and he is. So something actually turned him off from the start. And as you can see here, as I hit play, something is turning him off. So I think something with the activation timeline is causing this. So if we look at the sleeping guard here, let's ensure that here's the actor. All right, we make sure we're in preview. So it looks like everyone has kind of disappeared here. Oh, well, here, the game object isn't on. And maybe actually that's part of the problem. Let me see. Sleeping guard cutscene is here. We want to make sure that we have our actor there. Okay, so let's go ahead and turn that back off. Let's make sure that our sleeping guard is on. And let's run this. Okay, so there's our game asset. I must have just had him off. Must have just been like a fluke. So I'm going to get us back to the security guard here. I'll see you when I get there. All right, so here we are. We are back at the security desk here. We're going to trigger the cutscene. Darren's going to grab the key. Everything looks good now. Our actors are in play and our game asset is hidden. And there we go. Everything is perfect. However, notice that our camera angle did not go back to the original camera angle. Now, why is that? The way Cinemachine works and Timeline works is when you're creating a sequenced event using Timeline Cinemachine, if we select our Sleeping Guard cutscene right now, let's find our Sleeping Guard cutscene. You'll notice that we have these CM cameras here. Right? These are our Cinemachine virtual cams that we're switching between, right? So there are Cinemachine shots. The way it works is the main camera is taking the position and rotation of these objects. And what's happening here is our main camera is left with the position of the last virtual cam. A very quick solution to this is to simply have a third virtual cam that has the same look and position as our main camera. So to create that, what we can do is we can stop playing and we can go to, we're going to click this shot here. And we want to shorten this shot by about 1 frame. So this shot currently goes to the end, which is 360 frames. Go ahead and set this to about 359 frames. From there, what we can do is we can right click. We're going to add a new cinema shot sheen or new Cinemachine shot clip. And we're going to set this to be, the start is going to be 359 and the end is going to be 360. That means that for 1 frame, we will use that camera. Now, in order for this camera to actually work, we need to actually create a new virtual camera to assign to it. So you're going to go to Cinemachine, create virtual cam. You're going to rename this cam to CM Final Shot. And from here, we want to drag it into our Sleeping Guard cutscene and position it with our other CM virtual cameras. Once you've done that, select the Playable Director object again and drag into this slot in the inspector here the virtual camera. So CM Final Shot. The next thing you want to do is you want to solo that. And as you can see here, we are currently, if we turn on the Sleeping Guard here, right now our CM Final Shot here is somewhere in the scene hidden. What we can do is let's go ahead and align it up with where we should be, which is about right here. So from here, we're going to hit Control-Shift-F with CM Final Shot selected. And it looks like Control-Shift-F is giving me some problems. And actually, I believe it's working, but our cutscene has the black overlay on it. So if we actually were to actually test this out, we should see that it works just fine. And there we go. This would be our new starting position. And this is actually just fine. So I'm going to save my scene. I'm going to rerun this. I want to make sure that the Sleeping Guard cutscene is off. I want to make sure our game asset is there. Let's run the game. I'm going to get back to the guard and I'll see you when I'm there. So here we are. And we're going to trigger this cutscene and make sure everything looks okay. We zoom in here. All right, perfect. We have the security card and we can now continue on. I'll see you guys in the next video. We have a slight problem in our cutscene here. And it's not really cutscene specific, although it is. Now that we're out of the cutscene and everything works beautifully, watch what happens when I try to progress forward. Darren is having a struggle getting over to here. And my character controller is just going all sorts of out of whack. Let's see if I can get Darren up here. So basically what's happening now is our camera system broke. And the reason for this is because the main camera isn't in control right now. The actual camera that's in control is our virtual cam over here. So what I'd like you to do is go ahead and select your sleeping guard cutscene. Select the sleeping guard cutscene and you're going to notice that our wrap mode is on hold. This is keeping us in the cutscene for the last frame. So although our camera position has changed, our main camera actually isn't active. Watch what happens when I turn the cutscene off. Now our main camera is active and we can control Darren. So what we need to do is we need to actually turn this cutscene off. And the way we're going to do that is through an activation track. And the goal here is we need this object to turn itself off. Unfortunately, at the current time, Timeline does not let you just turn off its own activation track. It has to be a parent object that turns it off. Well, lucky for us, we have a cutscene parent object. So what we can do is we can create an activation track. And at the bottom here, we're going to add the cutscene's parent object. Drag it in there. And we want it to be on. We want this cutscene to be on for the length of the cutscene. However, we're going to cut it short by 1 frame. So select the activation track and make sure it's set to 359. Let's run our scene again. Make sure those changes occurred. Make sure you're not in play mode when you do that. We want to add the parent object over here. If you click on your grab cutscene zone, make sure that is all hooked up. Let's save your scene, run the game, let's head back there, and now what should happen is after the cutscene plays, it should now disable the parent object, which will in turn cause the actual playable director to go off, and that will give control back to the main camera. And your main camera should be positioned just fine. So let's go ahead and we're going to go ahead and make our way over there. And I'll also show you the setting for the third virtual cam to ensure that your camera does go back to normal. We definitely want to ensure that it goes back. We don't want it to get stuck on the second camera. So I'll show you those values to make sure that your frames are correct for your third virtual cam. Okay, so let's go ahead and trigger this cutscene. Here we are. We're going to go ahead and steal the card. Alrighty. And as you can see, control went back to the main camera. We're good to go to continue the game. There should be a camera collider here, which there is, and now I can walk up the stairs. Alrighty guys, so what I want to do now is I just want to look at my sleeping guard cutscene real quickly in Timeline. We have 3 virtual cams. Remember, we have one that takes us, let me turn this cutscene on. It's not going to let me preview it right now. We have 3 cameras. Alright, the final camera is where our main camera is going to take that position of. So on the second camera, I'm ending at frame 357, and on this final camera, I'm at frame 358 and ending at 360. That way we kind of get a view of what we need to look at before it goes back when it turns off, and then it gives control to the main camera. All right, so that is all we have left. So I will see you guys in the next section.